Let me ask you a question. When was the last time you were home alone, wanted to watch a scary movie, found one, and genuinely were scared when watching? Well, for me, it's been years. And that got me to think, what are the ratings for scary movies? A lot of them are actually bad. With The Orphan 57%, The Resort 38%, Scream 2020, 76%, and Halloween Kills 39%. Okay, and you're probably saying these are the new films. Let's look at the classics. When horror was at its best time, the 70s and 80s. Amityville Horror 1979, 61%. The Shining 83%. The Exorcist 84%. Black Christmas 1974, 71%. Carrie 93%. But this got me to think. In today's video, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna compare two films, the new school versus old school, and I decided to pick The Turning and The Shining. So why did I pick these two? They somewhat have a similar storyline, so we're gonna get to that very soon. But before we get started, make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know when my videos come out, hit the like button for the algorithm, and lastly, follow my Instagram because I post there almost every single day. To compare these two films, I'm gonna break it down into three categories: story building, visuals, and the endings. So let's look at the story building, and I'm gonna go back and forth to explain both movies at the same time and what I see. It's funny that The Shining tells you the whole plot of the movie within the first 15 minutes.
Tragedy we had up here during the winter of 1970. Hired a man named Charles Grady as the winter caretaker. He came up here with his wife and two little girls. But at some point during the winter, he must have suffered some kind of a complete mental breakdown. He killed his family with an axe.
We already know that Jack will go crazy and wants to kill his family by the end.
You can rest assured, Mr. Ullman, that's not gonna happen with me.
It's a very risky way to tell a story. Plus, the movie is extremely slow building up, being a 2.5 hour long film. If you have a high attention span, then you'll be interested to know how it unfolds. But if you get bored easy, you'll want to just Google the ending, which I highly do not recommend because they're not gonna explain it really well. While watching this movie, even though the plot can be seen as simple, quote unquote, there's more to it. It's definitely not pronounced. The movie is about sexual abuse. We are told at the beginning that Jack dislocated Danny's shoulder.
Just one of those things, you know, purely an accident.
No, it's not. Gosh, stop lying to yourself. While he was drinking one time. A one-time incident, apparently. But think about this. Midway through the movie, we know that the presence in the hotel can not physically do any damage, but needs to possess individuals to do their bidding.
Mr. Grady, weren't you once the caretaker here? Chopped your wife and daughter up into little bits.
So let me tell you why that detail is important and how it connects to sexual abuse. So we get to one scene. Door to room 237 is open. It couldn't be any spirit but a person. It had to be Jack because Wendy was in the boiler room very far away. The next time we see Danny, we see bruises on his neck and a broken sweater. And the only other person that could have done this was Jack. From Danny, who told Wendy that apparently a woman was in the hotel room. So Jack decides to do the good fatherly thing and go check out who's in the room. After Jack enters the room, he sees the undressed female and with no hesitation kisses her, showing me three things. One, it shows that he's probably cheated on Wendy before, showing this connection with the family. Infidelity.
You're distracting me, and it will then take me time to get back to where I was.
Why don't you start right now and get the fuck out of here?
Second, this room is a honey room suite used for sexual activity. When he comes in, he does exactly just that. And prior to that, Danny was in the room. Assuming Jack was there also, we can only imagine what happened when the cameras weren't looking. And third, after the female is revealed to be a ghost, Jack runs back to Wendy and he never tells her about the ghost, as if he's hiding something away from Wendy.
Did you find anything?
No, nothing at all.
What about those bruises on his neck? Somebody did that to him.
He did it to himself.
Jack trying to take attention from himself. You know, you don't want to be seen as a sexual predator. He'd rather make his son look crazy. Now, this is a different approach than what's done in the new school of horror. The Turning likes to keep the person in the dark. The plot is never really revealed until the third phase of the film. The director introduces a bit of information to keep you engaged, but never enough where you can guess the end. All we know at the beginning was that Giselle, Quince, and the parents' death were all accidents.
And may I ask how the parents died?
They died in a tragic car accident.
just outside the gate.
So at best, all you know is that their deaths are all going to be connected together. How? We don't know yet. You have to wait and watch. By giving a wee bit of information here and there, I feel this engages the viewer a lot more, opening the door to curiosity, making us want to stay there to watch the end. This goes in hand with the fact the film is very short, 94 minutes only, so the tempo's a little quicker. But guess what? What I noticed is that the old school really likes to implant ideas really early to the story that will later show up in the end. So let me tell you about this one scene. The word red rum is repeated hundreds of times.
Red rum.
Which at the very end, red run backwards means murder. Turning takes the same approach but doesn't give it to you on a silver platter like The Shining does. We are told at the beginning that the parents died at the property entrance by an accident. This is said once and never brought again, but at the end, the gears in your head start moving when you start connecting the dots. At one point in the movie, Flora was afraid to leave the property, saying she was going to die if she ever did.
Rose, tell her to stop or I'm gonna die!
So fast forward, we find out at the very end that everybody's terrorized by Quint's spirit. Quint must have been behind the parents' death. I can only assume that the parents left the property searching for help and he killed them right before they left the property. Now it's hard to compare these two films because the difference of technology is 40 years. The Shining never really used any special effects to scare you. Honestly, there may be 2 or 3 scenes that were considered scary. The old lady in the room 237, the bloody elevator, and the murdered daughters. That's all. Well, actually, I can't forget one famous scene. But let me tell you what they did good to scare you in this movie. 1, they used a feeling of loneliness in the isolated hotel to scare you. Remember, this hotel is far away from anything, about 21 miles. 2, the dysfunctional, eerie relationship between the family members. So Jack and Wendy are in a hopeless relationship that gets from verbal abuse to physical by the end. You never know at what point Jack is about to explode and just go crazy.
Here's Johnny!
Now, Jack and Danny on the other hand, father and son, it's a very questionable relationship, never showing love to his son. And that goes back to the sexual abuse that I said earlier. So acting is the method they use to scare the viewers in this film. Now, Turning is all special effects, visuals, jump scares, and creepy house. Throughout the movie, there is a tint to the environment, kind of like the movie Sleepy Hollow if you've seen it. It has a gothic feel to the environment, always dark, gloomy, and depressing, setting the mood for horror. Even the house you can see has similar effects. The home is generations old, lots of dark history, and you can feel it by the design of the set. The rooms have old bed frames, the walls have faded wall coverings, and the old lighting gives it a feel for the main characters to feel like they're in a hole, creating a hopeless feeling. Jump scares is what differs both movies greatly. Turning uses a mysterious presence, the ghost, to keep the viewer on their toes, never knowing exactly what Quint is capable of doing. There were a couple of times this movie actually gave me goosebumps, especially when Kate went to the basement. Ooh, it was super dark and scary.
Stop it! This isn't funny!
The movie is only as good as its ending. The Shining, you could say, actually has a rather happy ending, where Danny and Wendy escape and Jack freezing to death in the maze. The ending is a little different than the book. The book ends with the hotel burning when the boiler explodes. To me, an interpretation of this could be, you can say that Jack's soul, right, at the very end, is trapped in the hotel, and since it's burning, you can say his soul is like burning in hell. I would have preferred the book's ending, but I'm not saying this movie is bad, I'm just not satisfied. Now, Turning has so much potential, but with a capital B, capital U, capital T, there was 2 endings to the movie. Which one is true? I don't know. I would never know. I felt the first ending was great, where the house lady was murdered.
You knew Quinn killed Jessel.
Look, Quint's dead. I made sure of it.
Yo, what the fuck is that?
I've fallen and I can't get up.
And everybody escaped. You see these consequences and you see the risk, the danger. After that, Kate and the kids escape, but they decide this is not going to be the end. We're brought back to the scene where Kate is in the kitchen looking at her mom's paintings. Now, I don't know if this is a foreshadowing to the future or if everything that previously happened was made up to this point. But if it is a foreshadow of the future, Kate decides to choose a different path, questioning the kids about Quint and the kids gaslighting her, making her feel crazy just like her mom is. Then at the very end, we're shown that Kate is just like her mom, going insane. So let me tell you what I don't like about this. I didn't appreciate, even though the mom is introduced at the beginning, we're never really given the thought or the idea that throughout the movie, Kate is going crazy or insane just like her mother is. It kind of comes blindsided at the very end. I guess the director really wanted to surprise you at the end, but it just didn't fit in as they thought it would, I guess. Having two endings sucks. It feels as if the director was too scared to choose what she wanted to do, leaving the audience to decide. That's why this movie goes from 85 to immediately 40% in my books. So let's recap. Let's answer the question, what's better, old school or new school? So I've decided to make this visual so you can understand where I'm coming from on the pros and cons of The Shining and The Turning. So basically I want to summarize these points so they're generic to both new school and old school. So let's start with The Shining, the pros. So original stories. What I mean about this, at this point there's basically no horror movies out there, so everything you do on the big screen is basically your idea, making you the original author. Now what's important at that time is depth. They really make sure that they're criticizing something about society, the system, and they really develop their stories and characters. Now the soundtracks are very specific to the movies. They don't sound like any other soundtrack from a different movie. Okay, talented actors. What I mean about this is that this is the time of horror, the 70s and 80s, and a lot of famous people are just jumping onto these new films compared to nowadays where you never really see a famous actor into scary movies. Only if they're like the Conjuring or let's say the Jordan Peele, but only because they're successful already and the directors have already planned out their years in ahead. Okay, the pros on Turning. So it's quick pace, really fast, you don't really get bored. Now it's scary, more scary than old school because of the technology it has. If you can imagine it, you can make it on screen. So I'm a big fan of thriller and suspense, and these movies really have these traits that make you question everything and you're always in detective mode trying to understand what's gonna go on next. Now the jump scares, you only really see this in the new films because of the technology, the visuals that I said. It's scary, they really want you to immerse yourself into the film and get spooked out, goosebumps. Now let's look at the cons for The Shining. Okay, so it's a long movie, 2 hours and a half for this one. An hour longer than The Turning, but remember, they really want to develop their characters and their story. And lastly, it's not scary at all, but usually because of the technology, lack of it. Remember, at that time, they really had to use their resources, the limited amount of resources they had, and do the best they could. Now, cons for The Turning. The same thing I said about the pros, the jump scare, they could be cons. Depends on how they use it. Are they using it too much? Are they using it in the wrong timing? This can really kill off the vibe of a movie, or it can make you feel cringe if they're doing it too much. So lack of character development, you never really understand who the character is. You don't know their past, you just know what's going on in the moment and what's gonna go on in the future at the end. And you know, because of this, you don't really connect with the characters. And lastly, no original stories. What I mean about this is that at this point, we've had hundreds of years of plays, movies, novellas that are scary, and you can't really have an original idea. You just have to be influenced and gather details or plots from different movies and connect them together. So I really hope you understand where I'm coming from, and if you think I missed any pros and cons, put them in the comments and I might make a continuation video about this to really dig more and understand this. I really want to read more books and get more perspective of what people think about this. Maybe you think this is a one-time thing, but let me tell you, when I was in college, I watched all the Goosebumps episodes, and some of those 30-minute episodes had more depth than the entire MCU combined. Well, that's all for today, and like always, till then.